Rachel really did make a deal involving her husband and a plant. Her sister Leah had the plant, Rachel wanted it, and the price they agreed on was one night with Jacob. When Jacob came home from the fields, Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must come in to me, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes." It is one of the strangest sentences in Genesis, but the stranger part is what happened afterward. Rachel got the mandrakes, and Leah got pregnant. So why did Rachel want these plants in the first place, and how had two sisters reached the point where they were bargaining over their husband? The answer starts years earlier, with a marriage that had gone wrong before it had properly begun. Jacob had wanted Rachel. He loved her and agreed to work 7 years for her father Laban in order to marry her. But on the wedding night, Laban deceived him and gave him Rachel's older sister Leah instead. Jacob eventually married Rachel too. Now 2 sisters shared the same husband, and Jacob loved Rachel more. Genesis says, "When the Lord saw that Leah was hated, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren." That imbalance shapes almost everything that follows. Rachel has Jacob's love, Leah has children, and each woman longs for what the other has. When Leah gives birth to her first son, Reuben, she says, "Because the Lord has looked upon my affliction, for now my husband will love me." That is what Leah hopes the child will change, Jacob's feelings. Another son comes, then another, and when Levi is born, Leah says, "Now this time my husband will be attached to me." But nothing in Genesis suggests that Jacob's preference has changed. Meanwhile, Rachel is watching her sister have child after child while she has none. Genesis says Rachel envied her sister. Eventually, the pain spills out. "Give me children or I shall die." Jacob becomes angry. "Am I in the place of God who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" That question is important because despite everything this family is about to try, Jacob knows there is something here he cannot control. Rachel gives Jacob her servant Bilhah. Bilhah bears children, and Rachel receives them as her own. When Bilhah's second son is born, Rachel names him Naphtali and says, "With mighty wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister and have prevailed." That tells us how Rachel now sees the situation. She is not only grieving, she is keeping score. And Leah responds. When Leah stops bearing children for a time, she gives Jacob her servant Zilpah. More sons enter the household. Look at what this family has become. It began with Laban's deception. Then came a marriage divided by unequal affection. Leah keeps hoping children will make Jacob love her. Rachel desperately wants children of her own. Servants are brought into the arrangement. Even the births begin to sound like victories in a competition. Then, during the wheat harvest, Leah's young son Reuben finds something growing in a field. Mandrakes. Reuben brings them home to his mother. Rachel sees them and immediately asks, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." Why would Rachel care so much about a plant? Mandrakes had a reputation in the ancient world. They were associated with sexuality and fertility. For a woman desperate to conceive, their appearance would certainly have been noticeable. But Genesis never tells us exactly what Rachel believed about them. It does not say Rachel believed the mandrakes would make her pregnant. Perhaps she hoped they might help. Perhaps she believed it to be the reason Leah was bearing children. But Genesis never tells us explicitly. What we do know is that Rachel wanted them enough to bargain for them, and Leah's answer immediately reveals that this argument is not really about plants. "Is it a small matter that you have taken away my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also?" There are years of hurt inside that answer. Leah looks at Rachel and sees the woman Jacob chose, the woman Jacob loves. And now Rachel wants something else that belongs to her. So Rachel makes an offer. Then he may lie with you tonight in exchange for your son's mandrakes. And there is the answer to the strange question behind this story. Yes, Rachel really did agree that Jacob would spend that night with Leah in exchange for Reuben's mandrakes. Jacob comes home from the field. Apparently, the arrangement has already been made. Leah walks out to meet him. "You must come in to me, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes." Years earlier, Leah had hoped, "Now my husband will love me." Later, "Now this time my husband will be attached to me." And now she is telling Jacob, "I have hired you." That one sentence shows how far this household has fallen into bargaining and competition. Rachel wants children, Leah wants Jacob's affection, and for one night, each sister thinks she has found a way to get something from the other. Rachel gets the mandrakes, Leah gets Jacob for the night. Now watch what happens next. Rachel has the plant associated with fertility. Leah has given it away. So who conceives? Leah. Genesis says, "And God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son." Not Rachel, Leah, the woman who gave the mandrakes away. And Genesis does not say the plant caused anything. Instead, it tells us God listened to Leah. Leah later bears another son, Zebulun, then a daughter, Dinah. Rachel is still waiting. And after the bargain, the mandrakes simply disappear from the story. They are never mentioned again. Then comes the verse Rachel has been waiting years for. Then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb. Rachel conceives, and she gives birth to Joseph. Notice the wording Genesis has been using all along. Back when Leah was the unwanted wife, he opened her womb. When Rachel demanded children from Jacob, am I in the place of God? After Leah gives away the mandrakes, God listened to Leah. And when Rachel finally conceives, God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb. Genesis never has to stop the story and explain what we are supposed to notice. It keeps showing us. The sisters can make arrangements. They can bring Bilhah and Zilpah into the household. They can compete. They can bargain over Jacob. Rachel can even get the object associated with fertility. But every time Genesis explains the opening of a womb, it points somewhere else. And Rachel was not simply a woman who ignored God and trusted a plant instead. Earlier, when Bilhah bore Dan, Rachel herself had said, "God has judged me, and has also heard my voice and given me a son." So Rachel knew God was involved. She spoke of God hearing her, and later, Genesis says God listened to her again. That actually makes her story more human. Rachel could believe God heard her and still become desperate. She could pray and still reach for something that looked as though it might help. Leah could know that God had seen her suffering and still keep hoping another child would finally make Jacob love her. Neither woman fits neatly into a simple category. They are two wounded sisters inside a badly fractured family, and both are trying to get hold of things they cannot make happen for themselves. That is why the Mandrake episode matters. Rachel wants the plant linked with fertility. Leah wants time with the husband who prefers Rachel. So they trade. And for one night, both women get exactly what they negotiated for. Rachel gets the mandrakes. Leah gets Jacob. But the outcome does not follow their bargain. Leah gives away the mandrakes, and God listens to Leah. Rachel keeps the mandrakes and waits. Then, when Joseph finally arrives, Genesis does not go back to the plant at all. It says, God remembered Rachel. God listened to her, and God opened her womb. Rachel could get the mandrakes. She could not make them give her Joseph.